Peter King joining the Rich Eisen Show. How much weight have you lost, Peter?
Geez, I don't know. I probably lost about 45 pounds.
Wow.
New Year's of 2013 or whatever it is. But
Okay.
yeah, I tried to get down. Rich, you didn't tell him where we met. We met in the men's room.
Yes, we did. I'm trying to paint less of a word picture.
And I told you,
Yeah.
you have got to get Mike Mayock to read the ingredients on the air.
He refused to do it. I wanted, somebody said that they love listening to him so much that they would love to just listen to him read ingredients on the air. And he's a huge Mike and Ike guy. That's another thing about Mike that you don't know. He just loves, that's sort of like his sweet tooth. And I wanted him to read the ingredients on that, just to hear him say the words high fructose corn syrup during a combine. He wouldn't do it, Peter.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So,
hey, well, you had some fun, didn't you, the last few days?
We did. I mean, it's obviously a very, I guess obtuse might be the perfect word for it, event. There's really not much to wrap your arms around except the cold, hard facts and measurables and things of that nature. And yet there's 1,100 members of the media who are now there covering it. And I want to hit Jameis Winston with you first, Peter. And the only question I have left in regards to him is one that you talked about at the top of your Monday morning quarterback. And clearly his football IQ is through the roof, and he's an intelligent kid. And if that's the case, then why the missteps in his second year in Florida State after he knows the spotlight is on him, the scrutiny is on him, that if he's going to be the face of an NFL franchise, he needs to just not run afoul of anything. And yet there were some incidents in his life, no matter how troubling you may think about it, a cafeteria incident, a crab legs situation. Why would he go ahead and do that sort of thing if he's smart enough to know better, Peter? Where do you stand on that?
That's the great question, Rich. And I mean, I think that the Buccaneers have to make a decision. Were they momentary lapses in judgment where he thinks that, hey, I can do what I want either because I'm the Florida State quarterback or I'm the big man on campus or I'm too big for anybody to touch me? Those are danger signs, if you ask me. But at the same time, I think you also have to look at figuring out how many things happen when you're 19 or 20 years old that if you had to do over again a few years later, you'd say, oh, my God, I can't believe I did that. So, that's why I think it's smart for the Buccaneers to retain outside security, an outside security company to basically go into Jameis Winston's life and pull out the couch cushions and look under everything and try to find out everything about him. I think on the surface, it would really scare me at a time when the NFL is so incredibly intent on making sure that off-field you behave yourself, and especially as it relates to Marcus Mariota, who could run for governor of Hawaii tomorrow and win. Because I think, contrasting him to Mariota is not going to be a good look for Winston, at least now. And that's why I think you need to go back to growing up in Alabama. You need to look there. You need to look in Tallahassee. And then we'll see where we are in a month or so. But I did think it was significant for Jason Light to say to me, basically, bad guy or immaturity, and I'm leaning toward the latter.
Peter King of AMMQB.com joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So why is Mariota not anywhere? I didn't hear a single person. Now, I know that there was an unnamed scout that was mentioned. I believe, I forget who was writing about it, saying that Winston, that he wouldn't touch him by a 10-foot pole. I couldn't find a single person in Indianapolis who didn't rave about Winston and say that he's clearly going to be the number one overall pick. Why is Mariota falling off so completely from just that number one overall perch? He could be number two overall, clearly. But what's going on with that, do you think?
I think that's such an interesting question. And I think one thing I don't like about that, the rush to judgment that you absolutely should take Winston ahead of him. The one thing I don't like about that is, look, Mariota basically is going to have to redo a lot of things in his football life. Primarily, when you think about it, the fact that right now he doesn't, at Oregon, he does not. Not only does he not go under center, but he doesn't make play calls verbally in the huddle. I think it's really, really interesting that one of the things that Kevin O'Connell and Phillip Rivers, O'Connell is full-time quarterback coach, and Phillip Rivers, who's been nice enough to be kind of his consultant in 3 or 4 sessions out in San Diego, they've told him, listen, go into your hotel room at night or your dorm, wherever it is he's staying. Go in there and quite literally stand in front of the mirror and start calling out plays, because he's got to get used to being very quick and calling out plays. I met with Marcus at the combine, Rich, and one of the things that that we talked about was just that aspect of quarterbacking. How, first of all, he really hasn't huddled, and he hasn't called plays in a huddle, and he hasn't done much at the line of scrimmage as far as being able to call audibles. So he does have a lot of work to do. There's no question about it, but I think it's wrong to suggest that he's 100 miles behind Winston, because he's just too good to be way behind. And I definitely think that the guy has a good chance to make it big.
Peter King joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And then there's a piece on your site today by Greg Bedard essentially saying Melvin Gordon, it's tough to put a first-round grade on him because he didn't pass protect in Wisconsin.
He didn't pass protect. He wasn't asked to receive a lot, and that's one of the things I really like about Greg when he delves into a prospect. He'll go back and watch 4 or 5, 6 games on a guy and basically say, hey, look, here's what I see. I might be wrong. I'm not saying that I'm the final arbiter, but they didn't ask him, to blitz, to do any blitz pickup. They didn't ask him to receive very much. So these are things you just don't know. Usually, especially with a running back, because the position has been so devalued over the last few years, that, and you see all these guys, Justin Forsett walks into the Ravens and is a star when he got cut from 53 teams. And I mean, I'm not killing Justin Forsett. I'm just saying he was a guy on the street, and then he becomes a playoff running back. And so running backs are out there. I'm not saying they're a dime a dozen, but I think that Melvin Gordon is a guy who you really are going to have to do your homework on. I think Todd Gurley is a fascinating study. And I had one team, Rich, out there say Todd Gurley is going to be just a back in 2015. He might be Adrian Peterson in 2016 when he fully recovers.
Yeah, Dion called him a grown man. Everybody really raves about Todd Gurley. And while I have you here in the last couple of minutes I have left with you, let's turn to the genuine article in Adrian Peterson, and the article that our colleague Jason Lockenflora wrote about Ben Dogra, his agent, coming to blows with members of the Vikings front office when they met on this subject in Indianapolis. Where does this stand between Adrian Peterson and the Vikings as you and I are talking right now, Peter King?
Well, I've thought all along that it was going to be pretty difficult for Adrian Peterson to go back to Minnesota because of the water under the bridge and the fact that he felt a little bit, I'm not saying totally, he felt a little bit abandoned by the team last year during his, I call it a suspension, even though it was a paid leave. And I've thought all along that he was going to ask them for his release. Now, this is a gut feeling on mine. I got nobody in Peterson's camp or the Vikings telling me that they think this is going to happen, but I think it's a little bit presumptuous to think that the Vikings would just let him go, knowing that there'd be a pretty good market out there for him. I think if the Dallas Cowboys don't re-sign DeMarco Murray, they'd be very interested in Peterson. I think the Arizona Cardinals will be very interested in Peterson if he's on the street. So I think the Vikings, if it comes to this, really ought to ask for something in trade for him.
Brockman, you want to ask Peter King the poll question quickly before he goes out the door?
Hey, Peter, who's most likely to be in a new uniform next season? Adrian Peterson, Jay Cutler, DeMarco Murray, Julius Thomas.
What do you think?
I'd say Adrian Peterson 1, Julius Thomas 2, DeMarco Murray 3.
And then Cutler staying put.
Cutler, I don't think they're going to get rid of him, but I do think that if they did decide to get rid of him, I know the Buffalo Bills would be in line.
Terrific. Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All the best, Rich. Thank you.
You bet. Take care of yourself. Peter King.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.